This is Attorney James Ratchford, continuing my series on the 5-step sequential evaluation process for evaluating disability claims in Social Security disability. Right now I'm going to talk about step 4 and 5 of the process, but before going into those steps specifically, I'm going to give you some background information, which is called the residual functional capacity. So we could almost call this step 3.5, even though it doesn't technically fall in as a step. So evaluating a residual functional capacity is very important to determining a claim of disability because steps 4 and 5 of the evaluation process are evaluated in consideration of what a person's residual functional capacity is. So, what is a residual functional capacity? Residual functional capacity is what you can or cannot do in light of your medical condition and any limitations that your medical condition imposes on you. It is a function-by-function breakdown of your capabilities. So where you're going to see an RFC, we call it an RFC for short, and comes up a lot in discussions, so you may hear at your hearing, you may hear in a conversation with your attorney, or a conversation between the attorney and the judge, or any number of places we're going to talk about your RFC. And when we say RFC, that stands for residual functional capacity. We want an RFC to be function by function and break down in exact detail what you can and cannot do. So, for example, an RFC will say how much you can lift, how much you can carry, frequently and occasionally, how much time in an 8-hour day you can spend sitting, standing, and walking, how much time at one time you can sit, stand, walk, etc. Your ability to perform various other activities such as bending, crouching, crawling, kneeling, stooping, reaching overhead, manipulating things with your hands, fine manipulation, gross manipulation, fingering, handling, feeling. All of these things will be assessed on a basis of frequency. It will say whether you can do it occasionally, frequently, constantly, or not at all. It will include things like avoiding workplace hazards, avoiding heights, avoiding moving machinery. All of these things will be assessed in your functional capacity in terms of how often you can do them. They will also assess elements of your mental residual functional capacity, such as your ability to perform simple work or complex work, skilled or unskilled work, your ability to remain on task. For what percentage of the day can you remain on task? How often would you require excess breaks? Would you require excess breaks? Would you require a limitation to how often you can interact with supervisors, coworkers, or the general public? All of these things must be accounted for in a residual functional capacity. Now, a residual functional capacity is going to start by an exertion level. The exertion levels are essentially 4 or 5 levels of exertion. We've got sedentary, light, medium, heavy, and very heavy. And we also have less than sedentary. But really, along with less than sedentary, we have all of the myriad variations of exertional functional capacities that can fall between these different tiers. So when we evaluate your residual functional capacity, or rather when a judge evaluates your RFC in a decision, he or she is going to start with a tier. She's going to say, the claimant can perform light work except, or sedentary work except, or the full range of sedentary work as defined in the regulations. And that's going to be a starting point, but they still need to go into more detail. They need to assess all of the other factors that we talked about in terms of your postural activities, your mental activities, your social activities, your scheduling restrictions. All of that is going to have to be discussed in terms of frequency, frequent, occasional, constant, never. All of those things are going to have to be broken down. And an RFC can be a pretty lengthy and detailed finding. I mean, sometimes the paragraph that just lays out what the RFC is alone is half a page of the decision. And other times it's very short, such as the claimant can perform the full range of light work, but only unskilled work. And it could be that simple, but generally we're going to want it to be more detailed. And then this is going to be applied in the next 2 steps of the disability analysis when we align your residual functional capacity with your ability to perform your past work and other work in the national economy. And both of those are going to be very important in how your residual functional capacity stacks up. In terms of the job of an attorney and your job in testifying at your hearing, your goal is to get as many limitations as possible into your residual functional capacity, because the more limited that residual functional capacity is, the harder it will be for the judge and the vocational expert to find jobs that fit that residual functional capacity. Getting a lot of limitations and detailed limitations and accurately representing your capabilities is very important in getting your residual functional capacity properly evaluated, so that when we get to steps 4 and step 5, they can be evaluated correctly. So that's it on the residual functional capacity, which is really the preamble to step 4 of the sequential evaluation process, which we will discuss in the next video.